It's podcadzo.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can.
How's that?
I've been able to hear you.
Is that-
Like, I want to hear less of you.
Oh,
No,
I thought maybe you needed a little bit more.
Yeah, give me more. No, that sounds good. That sounds good.
I'll try to keep it respectful today. I won't do any screaming or. Well, usually the worst thing I do into the mic is vape, so I'll try not to vape into the mic today.
You know, it's your space. I'm
Thanks
just
for
a
being-
guest, so you
thanks for
do
being supportive.
don't do anything different on my account.
This guy, whenever the cameras are off, he's like always making sure to hound me on everything I'm fucking up. So it feels nice to have some support in this place. And you don't
That's
know.
the worst thing I do in the mic.
You don't know because you're a self-respecting human being, and therefore you don't watch our podcast. But this guy always opens his beers into the mic every single fucking week. It's a tradition that everyone likes except for me.
You gotta have a gimmick like that. You know, you gotta have something.
It's
so you're
pronounced
vaping
Guinness,
into the mic.
actually.
Touche.
Yeah, do you still back it up? You still feel good about that?
Yeah, you know, let's cut here. And
We'll start over.
We'll start now.
Now. Okay.
Welcome to podcadzo,
Welcome
everybody.
to Podcadzo. We have a very special guest today. We're just going to cut right to the chase because we don't want to waste our special guest's time. He's a very busy man. He's got a lot to do.
It's not true at all.
You're going to the White House after this, right? Aren't you like
I'm not
delivering
invited,
an address?
but I'm
Oh.
gonna, I'm gonna try.
He's going to deliver his
Do
address
the old
anyway.
run across the lawn and
Dude,
get
you
shot.
should streak at the White
Yeah,
House.
I mean, I'm nimble. You wouldn't know it looking at me, but I'm light on my feet. You know, I can
believe it.
sneak around a little bit when it's called for.
I
believe
think you
100%.
could be the first person to successly do that.
Yeah,
I believe it.
it must have been done.
All right. Well, we didn't
Probably has
introduce
been
him
done.
yet.
No,
Before
Who
we
am I?
scheme, this is Riley, the man who's about to break into the White House. Say your last name for the people.
because you're not sure that you're gonna say it right.
I'd have never known
No.
if I'm saying it right or not.
That's fair. That's fair. I mean, honestly, I don't even know half the time. No, Riley Sbrana.
Sbrana.
It's SB, so
I
it's a
knew it.
weird one.
No, I knew it.
But a lot of people put the A in there. That's
Yeah,
Sbrana,
I
which
did that.
I don't mind. I mean, that's fine. I get why that is easier. And in fact, my grandfather apparently used to just he was just like screw it, and he would write it SAB because he was
He
just like
leaned
yeah,
into it.
I'm just
All right.
I'll just be Sbrana. It's easier. But
Where's Sbrana from? What's your ethnic background?
Well, I mean, it comes from my grandparents who were Italian.
Italian. Okay.
My dad's dad was a Italian immigrant.
We've
but,
got a fellow Guido in the house. I never knew that.
Yeah.
Really, I try to put off as much of that energy as
You
I
try to
can.
go. You try to lean into the Italian.
Yeah,
I try to lean
it's
out
like
of
my
it.
whole vibe. It's the slick back hair.
You
It's,
look
know,
super Italian right now.
yeah, it's the it's the constant threats to bodily harm. Pay me back on time. But no, the name I believe is actually Basque origin. So I don't know. That's why it's weird. Who knows anything about Basque?
I don't even know what that is.
I believe it's a territory between Spain and France.
Okay.
But honestly, I could be wrong. You guys have fact checkers on this.
That
podcast.
sounds right.
Yes,
and
we have
that's
our people
a
looking
that's a background
into
I
it.
would like to bask in.
Ah, fucking great.
You didn't.
You can leave if
You
you
didn't
want.
tell me about this.
If you want to get out of here, it's fine. There's no hard feelings. We are going to talk about you a lot today, though, if you do stick around.
I'm going to talk about me a lot as well.
Cool.
That's usually all I talk about. I'm very self-centered.
Well, then this should be like a walk in the park for you. This will be very easy.
Yeah, I mean, I have to admit, I'm not super well versed in podcasts in general, so I wanted.
Neither are we.
Well, yeah, I mean, you guys obviously, have this thing set up. It's a cool space here, but I was kind of preparing myself a bit, checking out some of the popular podcasts out there, and I'm totally ready to talk about how I hate women and I love the gym.
Yeah.
I feel like that's kind of what podcasts are.
Pretty much.
That's perfect. Julie and I
Okay.
have been consciously trying to shift from a music podcast to more like the gym bro.
Nice.
kinda-
Yeah.
And defiling
Yeah.
women.
I didn't know you could do
Defiling
podcasts
women.
about anything other than those things. So
There's the occasional cooking podcast, but it's not actually informative. You just kind of listen to people or watch people cook.
I feel like I feel like a cooking podcast that didn't have a visual element would be
Yeah,
Very
is that,
hard.
strange. I don't.
Is
I don't
that
know
real?
if there are ones without visual elements, but there's one of everything out there.
Yeah,
so.
true. But that's like a well-known podcast genre. I've never seen
Cooking?
that. Cooking.
There are like little mini cooking pods that are supposed
Oh.
to be like how to make
for a recipe?
recipes,
That's
but
cool.
they don't like break down the recipe itself. It's just kind of like, then you do this, then you do this, then you do this, then you do
And
this.
see, and that's the hard part right there. Is if I wasn't able to see what you were doing with your hands, I'd have no idea what to do.
Yeah, you'd probably just.
I wouldn't know that I'm supposed to do this and then this.
I'd just be
And then
touching my
this.
nipples the whole time. This.
I mean, that's probably as close as you're gonna get to making something good. So,
Yeah.
anyway,
He got you.
so
True. This is my cooking.
we have a very important question at the very top for you.
Ask away.
We've been in a little bit of a thing lately. It's been happening on and off the pod, but it continues, and so we're just bringing everyone into it. What are your opinions on the band U2? Do you have any opinions at all?
That's a complicated question. I mean,
Good start. Good start.
well, U2 is an iconic band. Can't argue that. And I did go through a big U2 phase. I mean, my uncle is like that's his band. And my uncle's
Really?
great. He's very cool and he's awesome. So I figured U2 must be cool and awesome. And they do. I mean, they have some great music. Like I can't deny that. I have seen them live. They put on a good live show. But I do feel like they're one of those bands that I don't think they made anything that I like in my lifetime. You know what I
Sure.
mean? Like, I don't think I've been alive during a period where U2 was making music that I would consider good.
Okay.
But I do appreciate some of their stuff from the 80s. Like, I mean, I think that like their seminal albums are great albums. Like, I know that there's controversy around U2. I was I had an iPod in the infamous scandal where they put all their music on it.
So
and
you were
it didn't
affected
bother me
firsthand.
because it's like, I also used to I used to have different taste in music. But I don't know. I don't harbor any ill will, but I think Bono a little bit of a challenging dude to like. Dude, I'm
Diplomatic
gonna
answer.
get canceled, man.
no, that's
These
okay.
U2
No,
fans,
I
they're
think-
they're vicious.
That's what a good fan should
Trust
do.
me,
They
my
should
uncle,
call you
dude,
out.
He's gonna kick my ass.
I don't think any YouTube fan would hate that take that
No,
you had.
I consider myself a U2 fan, and I sometimes can't stand Bono. Most of the time, I can't stand Bono.
Yeah, I mean, I remember though that I was in middle school and I listened to the was the album called Vertigo or was that the song?
How to dismantle
Yeah.
an
It's
atomic
okay.
bomb.
Yes. Okay. Thank you. Yeah. Which is a pretty intriguing title. I like that. But I just
It
remember
is.
the song Vertigo, and I used to listen to that album and like it, and that's when where I look back and I'm like, this album doesn't necessarily do it. Though sometimes you can't make it on your own. Could probably still like draw some emotions out.
Oh,
of me.
yeah.
That's a great
I'll be
song.
honest. So I guess maybe you guys are making me realize that I love U2. They're the greatest band of all time.
It finally worked.
Okay, but now I need to know the what's going on.
Well, basically, that thing that you just said,
Bono, you're here? Oh my God, guys!
because of what you just said, we're all going to donate $200 million to the Red campaign, including you.
I
hope you're ready for that.
I am so ready for
And we're
that.
on camera, so we can't back out. Anyway, what you just said ironically about U2 being the best band in the world, I've been somewhat re-going through as an adult. I went through it as a child. U2 is like my mom's favorite band, and we listened to them all the fucking time. It was like the only thing we listened to. And I hated them for like a solid chunk of my life. Like I would say 2008 up until like a month ago, I just couldn't really tolerate them.
month ago.
I was always a big fan of Octung Baby.
Yeah.
I was always a big fan of
you can tolerate
Zooropa.
them.
I was always a big fan of How to Dismantle an Atomic Bomb.
I
Couldn't
think
really
just
get around the
recently
rest
you
of
had
it.
a U2 dip.
I remember, and the reason why it's coming back to me now is just I remember really hating Songs of Innocence and everything that kind of like came around Songs of Innocence.
Which
because
is
defiled your iPod.
Yeah, that's
I
the
didn't
iPod
have an
album.
iPod.
How dare they?
I had what's called a Zen Stone, and it had 1 gigabyte of memory. It was about this big, didn't have a screen, had
Zen
like
Stone.
4
That's awesome.
buttons. Yeah, I'll see if I can find a picture.
I miss the days when Apple didn't have
But,
the monopoly on
right? When there was
music
other
playing
options.
devices.
I liked when they were just dedicated music listening devices.
Oh, I should have known that was going to happen.
Yeah, I had a friend who was all in
That
on
was
the
the problem with the
Zune.
branding.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
the
mean
Zune.
that was, and I mean I used to have the Walkman. Like
Yeah.
that was a big deal. I
That-
had-
The Walkmans.
Oh,
some of
okay.
them.
That
See,
was what I had.
that looks pretty cool.
It was 1 gigabyte. This one is 2, but mine was only 1. So it
So it's
only
like
had
the size of like the iPod Nano.
had
It's
like
a
14
little-
songs on it.
Oh wow!
But when Songs of Innocence
Who
came
needs
out,
more than 14 songs.
you really
There shouldn't be an album that's more than 14 songs.
yeah,
That's
one
too
album
many.
at a time or like 12 of your favorite songs. That's pretty much your 2 choices. But yeah, so Songs of Innocence came out. I was in my prog phase at that point where like anything that wasn't in like mixed meter time, that wasn't like super out there.
Are you
fucking
implying
weird.
you're no longer in that phase?
I'm coming out of it now.
Okay.
I know that's going to be hard for you to believe.
Yeah.
It's been a few years. I'm starting to come out of it now. But no, so essentially I hated Songs of Innocence and everything it stood for, and I never gave it a chance until pretty recently.
Yeah. Like this past weekend.
And that's what has kind of made me go back through the rest of their catalog and listen to everything else. And well, not everything else, but like everything that I wasn't sure about. So I listened to No Line on the Horizon and had a pretty good time with it. It's a little boring, but it's also pretty experimental, the back half of it anyway. And then I listened to songs or How to Dismantle an Atomic Bomb. Thought it was great. Didn't really have any complaints about it at all. And then I went back and listened to Songs of Experience, and I thought that album was a massive piece of fucking trash. So I'm still kind of on the fence a little bit about newer U2, but I think Songs for Innocence is really good, and that's pretty much where all this comes
I'm
from.
suspicious of any band that could have been putting music out as long as U2 has, and none of it is absolute trash. Like that,
Sure.
something's not right there. You can't do that
Right.
unless you're Steely Dan.
Unless you're Steely Dan, or I would say Radiohead/Radiohead offshoot projects, but that's a personal opinion.
No, that's fair. That's
Yeah.
fair. I could probably think of lots of examples of that.
Yeah,
but
there's a
U2, it just
few.
feels, especially when you're that big.
There's like less bands that stay good, fully good throughout their entire career than bands that kind of peter out towards the end. And I think I took a little bit more of a Metallica approach where it's like, if Metallica can release like 1 or 2 good songs per album, I'll take that as a win. There's like 4 to 5 very solid tracks on Songs of Innocence, and so I'll call that album a win. And anyone who disagrees with me is fucking wrong, and I hate you.
There's the podcast attitude that I was looking for.
I'm trying to work it in
Let's
for you.
go. Yeah, I like that.
And now we'll shift to an ad for supplements.
I was going to talk about BetterHelp.
That works too.
Yeah.
I shove AG1 up my butthole 5
Every
times a
fucking
day.
morning!
Yeah. I'm
some
feeling
more
great.
news listener, I see.
I think you just severely misrepresented your YouTube background though, because no way, we like since Kadzo has started at least, and I think when we were in bands previously, we've both been massive YouTube heads.
Sure. I guess I always had a respect for you two, kind of like what Riley was saying. You have to respect it because it's kind of an institution. But I would say there was about a 10-year window of time where I never listened to them or like thought about them. And I actively, for the first few years, especially like towards the end of high school, I spent a couple years kind of like actively disliking them because it's like the cool thing to do. Like, fuck you too, fuck Bono, they're pretentious, they're selling out their
That
dicks.
is very cool.
I felt great about it.
I
It got me a
Find
lot
you
of
very
ladies.
cool right now. You just said that as an example.
Yeah, thank you. So, but the love and the nostalgia was always there. Like anytime I would throw on like Octung Baby, I would be like, this is fucking amazing. Or like Joshua Tree. That album never really left me, but I stopped having it in my rotation for a pretty long time.
Yeah.
And now it's starting to come back where it's like, you know, if I can't think of anything I want to listen to, I'll throw on Joshua Tree. I don't give a shit. Whereas like a month ago, it was Steely Dan. So
We do have a Steely Dan episode coming up, so
Oh, there.
yeah.
You got Donald Fagen coming on. Is he the one that's
We got
still
the
alive or
Fags.
the one
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
dead? I honestly.
Walter
We're having
Becker
the dead
died.
ones
Okay, I was
on.
gonna
Yeah.
say I didn't want to like. I mean, that would be cool, and it's like a Ouija board.
I was gonna say we could try the Ouija board thing.
Yeah, but no, that's I agree with that take. I think that nostalgia with bands like that plays a big role for me. There are bands that I just feel guilty saying anything bad about because I grew up with them, and the people in my life who care about those bands and love those bands, I care about and love, and so I feel like I'm saying something about them. You know, I wouldn't want to disparage my uncle by, saying that anybody who listens to U2 is boring or something.
Right. There's a lot.
I wouldn't say that.
No matter how much I felt that was true.
Exactly.
Well, to be clear, just for the record, I've been a U2 fan my entire life without faltering ever. If
Wow.
anything, I love them more with each day.
Every day.
Every day.
Have you
I
heard of
wake up and I
other
say,
bands?
"God
Have you
damn,
checked any
I
of
love
those
U2."
out? Or is this every single day? You're just like, this is the band that exists and I
literally
listen to.
Barely any other bands. Only bands that are tangential or U2
and bands that
adjacent.
peaked in the 90s.
Yeah.
No, I respect that. I do. I just respect anybody who has a long-lasting commitment to their fandom of anything, really. If you commit that hard to loving something and making it your whole personality, like, who am I to, say anything bad about that? That's commitment that I've never shown anything.
And
Speaking
putting
of-
that much effort into like staying relevant is kind of hard in itself. It proves that you like give a shit about wanting to at least impress the zeitgeist a little bit, not just be like
Sure.
jerking yourself off like the fucking Rolling Stones. Anyway, what were you gonna say?
Well, we have other questions for you, Riley, but speaking of which, and
only
since,
prepared to talk about you two. That was all that I was
that's probably
expecting
mostly
to discuss.
And the other thing that surprised me about Julian's answer is more than anything, this is mostly a YouTube podcast. They're probably the one thing that comes up every episode. But you mentioned you had bands that like your entire life you've loved and you wouldn't say anything about. Who are some of those bands?
I mean, the most obvious example of that is the Beatles, which is the most, cliche answer. But I mean that my dad's a musician and is the reason I'm a musician, and I have a lot of respect for my dad as a musician. And the Beatles are that's his be all end all of music. And, I get it. Like, I was raised on the Beatles and I think that they're a fantastic band. And, I'm not going to say that they don't have, in fact, I think that they definitely have songs that I don't like. And that's kind of what I say. It's like, it'd be weird if they didn't,
That's part of being a fan.
for how long that, they'd been around. And I mean, obviously the solo careers, that's kind of a different thing, but that's in fact we recently we were doing a family movie night over Zoom because my whole family lives not here, but yeah, we watched Nowhere Boy, the John Lennon.
Yeah, that's a great one.
Which
Yeah.
I had seen, but it'd been years, and it's fun, and it's nostalgic hearing anything, early Beatles, though I guess at that point it was what were they? Long John
the Quarrymen.
Silver, the Quarrymen,
Yeah.
and then the Silver Beatles. Yeah, but regardless, that's one. I feel like that's kind of an obvious answer. I do feel like Steely Dan, unironically, is a band that I think it's weird when people don't like Steely Dan. I'm like, you just haven't listened to them. I guess you must be thinking of some other band because they're fantastic. And I mean, I don't know. I didn't. I'm sure there are others. I mean, there are bands that are not bands that I grew up with, but bands that I've listened to for like, well over a decade. Like, that. But I feel like that's a little bit of a different question. But bands that like, my parents introduced me to. Like, I feel like they did have good taste in music, though. Like I said, my dad's a musician, so
Those are two excellent answers.
I think
Beatles and Steely Dan.
one thing that has always been like cool to me, like knowing you and watching you from the outside, is I
that's
feel
you
like
out there.
it's me.
Dude, you need to stop watching me outside my house, dude.
You're really cute when you sleep.
Allison is very uncomfortable.
She doesn't have to be there.
Sometimes it's me
she could
too.
leave.
All right.
Just so you know.
Sorry. Anyway,
I was.
you were saying something kind, and I turned it into a joke.
What was it? Yeah, it was something along the lines of.
He's cute sleeping.
You've always been really good at, I would say, in all of your like songwriting and the projects that you've been a part of, and just kind of the stuff I've seen you like produce or help other people produce. I feel like you're always really good at pulling from your influences and like in some ways trying to like pay homage to some of your more important influences, especially like lately with like the Young Habitat project, which we'll talk about more. But who are like some of those
I appreciate
more
you not using the phrase ripping off.
no, I mean,
because
it's definitely not ripping off, because everything that you do is inherently very original and it all sounds like you. Even when you branch off and try different things, there's always like the common thread of this is like a Riley song. You go about your song structures in a very specific way, I feel like, and you try to break the mold in a lot of ways, but the things that you like about artists, you're not afraid to like turn that into your own thing and use it in your benefit. So who are those artists? Like, I know of at least one, but I want to hear you say it.
oh, I feel like we're talking about Bon Iver.
100%.
Yeah, we have
But
to. Be.
I know there's more than just Bon Iver in the mix.
I mean, it is something that I think about because it's something that I have struggled with as a musician. Like, I feel like my identity as a musician has never been super consistent. Even just, between Nearby Liars and Young Habitat, I feel like there's 2 EPs of, with Nearby Liars and then the Young Habitat EP, and they're all kind of 3 different styles. Like, Nearby Liars started completely different than what the EP that we did in 2018 was, and it's just like, I feel like I struggle with, I'm like, I don't have like this really specific style, like this genre that I stick to, that I think, I think that's great. I think that's like what a lot of bands do, but I have found out that, I have ADHD, which has informed a lot of that. Like, I'm like, oh, okay, it makes sense that I never really stay on track with like the music that I'm making. But I do find myself very inspired by whatever music I'm listening to at any given time. And that can span a lot of different artists and genres and things. So, I definitely, I'm glad that you see that as a good thing. 'Cause sometimes I'm like thinking, geez, I should probably stick to like one style and just go from there. But,
I think if anything, and I'm only speaking for myself right now, everyone else can fuck off, but the thing that I see about that makes me feel like more inspired to lean into the things I want to try more, because it's like a lot of other people do kind of like pick one thing and try to stick to it, and they like just pursue like perfecting that one thing. But I think with you, it's a lot more about doing what makes you feel satisfied in the moment, which is, I think, more creatively satisfying. And it's like more genuine when you're coming at it from a listening perspective. And I think even though it is all kind of different, there is still like a lot of commonality between it all, where it's like there's definitely, specifically on like the second Nearby Liars EP, I would say there's like definitely some beginning thoughts and like ideas and somewhat explored kind of like concepts that you then dipped your toes into a lot more later on with like the Young Habitat stuff. And even like with the first Nearby Liars EP, which is just you, there's a lot of like building blocks that kind of take you into the second EP. So I feel like it's all very kind of linear and it all makes sense.
yeah.
And yeah, it all feels like comes from the same universe. It's not just like every time you put something out, you're like completely reinventing yourself and like
Yeah.
blowing everything up and starting from ground zero again. Like,
No, I appreciate that. I was talking to a friend the other day about how, he had a act that has been, been his main project for a long time. He's been making all his music under that moniker, and then he started something new, and 'cause he was just kind of like wanting something fresh and to do something a little different and not have like the expectation of, what the fans of that other project would expect. And I was just feeling, I mean, it is hard for me to not like just every time I start to get like a little bit of like musical writer's block to be like, well, I guess it's time to start a new band because there's something fun and kind of exciting about trying to reinvent yourself. But, I also do feel like, at least, yeah, for me, there is probably some general through lines between both projects, even though I think they serve different purposes for me, at least, creatively. And, it definitely, there's a lot of different influences. Like, we mentioned Bon Iver, which I think Justin Vernon is actually a great example personally of this, is that, even just all his other various projects that, Shouting Matches and Volcano Choir, and he was a part of Gangs,
Big Red
and
Machine.
Big Red Machine, and, all of that aside, just Bon Iver, like as an, act itself, each release feels very different when you just break it down and you look at it like, what does this sound like in a vacuum? I mean, they're so different, and she's trying so many new ideas and different lineups of musicians on some of them, and yet you always know
Yeah.
it's a Bon Iver song. There's something consistent there, and that's something that I really respect in a lot of artists that I like. Is it's risky to try and reinvent yourself at all, and even someone like for whatever, like someone like Taylor Swift, who is like the biggest artist in the world right now. Like, it's crazy to me that she puts out like albums in different genres and is still manages to be this top selling artist. John Mayer is another great example of that, where it's just like this guy can make great music that in any genre. Like, I think that that's just, regardless of whether or not I'm a fan, is something that I find pretty inspiring.
Totally.
Yeah, but what was the question we were talking about?
Right, that was pretty much it, honestly. Just people,
I think you asked about influences. Though,
maybe other non Justin Vernon people who have inspired you since the Steely Dan years.
Sure, yeah. And, my music is very inspired by Steely Dan, obviously. You can hear a lot of those ideas. But, I think the artist that kind of caused the biggest shift for me, like when I was like, okay, I'm going to make, like, it was between the first and second Nearby Liars EP, where it was like, this became my biggest inspiration, is Pine Grove.
Okay.
And
nice.
Still probably like one of my top favorite bands. I love Pine Grove, not just because of their recent TikTok meme stardom that they.
They were
the Pine Grove dance.
Yeah,
the Pine Grove
dance.
Shuffle.
Shuffle. That's right.
Which is funny because they just kind of taken a break from being a band, and then just blew up with the young folks,
young crowd.
But I liked them before it was cool. Actually,
nice.
They were always very cool. But no, I their album Cardinal, which I think is their best album and one of my favorite albums ever. I was listening to that a lot, like 2016, 2017, when I was writing this new this music for the EP Everything Is Replaced, and I mean, obviously there's plenty of differences, but there was something about the way that they were able to, be loud and rock out and kind of have this heavier side while also still being very, thoughtful lyrically, and kind of blending some styles of country, but also like, you have like some emo influences and some, more like, just straight like Southern rock influences and all of these things, and folk, and all coming together, and just the actual like sonic style of that album specifically was like, okay, how do I make music that feels like this? And I'm not saying that I accomplished that, but it took me in a direction. And then Gleamer was a big one.
Yeah, I remember Gleamer.
They're a local band, but I mean, they've seen a lot of success outside of Northern Colorado, which I think is awesome. And they are fantastic. And every time I got to run sound for them a good amount of times, and I loved their entire sound. I mean, they just nail that kind of wall of sound, when they're going for that, just very rich and heavy, but then still, again, like very like melodic and intentional with like kind of their, just their entire style. Like it feels like there is a blend of some things that I really like going on, lyrics and then taking it to, a a pretty heavy place when it needs to go there, and then just dynamically. So all that is to say is that that was another band that at that time they kind of contributed to my shift from the kind of almost, I want to say like an acoustic EP because it wasn't entirely acoustic, but a lot mellower, to wanting to play really loud, which Julian helped with a lot.
I can do loud.
He can definitely do that.
But yeah, those are artists, and then I think like Smashing Pumpkins and
Nice.
My Bloody Valentine and some of those like kind of shoegazy bands. Like I always really enjoyed that style, and so I think there was a lot of blending of that for that EP at least. But I'm not implying that I succeeded in like capturing any of what these amazing bands were doing, but
I think it definitely gets there at multiple points on that EP, the Everything Is Replaced EP. I think because there's moments where it is kind of like a bit more I don't want to say like sparse, but it's a bit more just like stripped back and kind of Pine Grovey and just focused on like being groovy and then adding subtle layers. And then there's other parts of the EP that kind of go into like the shoegaze vibe or even almost like a little bit of a grunge vibe. And yeah, it's not to say that you like ripped anybody off because I definitely feel like it's still a very original piece of work, but I can see after having explained that where all those influences kind of fall into place.
Yeah, it's funny that you say like, because I did feel like, so the first song Mountaintop on that EP has, it's different than but the song that I remember very specifically, like at least beginning to inspire, because I started writing that on acoustic and it was a different feel, but was the song Need To by Pine Grove from Everything So Far. And and it's just kind of that groove that they have, similar kind of chord styles, and then again, lyrically it was different, but I start that song by saying I don't need all these things I've got. And again, I just remember very specifically, it was like, I want to write a song like that. And then it turned into its own thing. But I do still like notice it. And then like, it's like, what, this is like Pine Grove. They're like a newer band. And then this is their like, previous album to the one that they kind of like burst onto the scene with. Nobody even knows that song. And then that song is the song that became the meme song, and now is their like most played song. And so I'm like, damn, if my song was more popular, people would be mad at me. But unfortunately, no one's listened to it.
Or they would be dancing to it on TikTok.
Yeah.
It's hard to say which direction things go.
Was Nearby Liars your first musical project, ever, first stuff you put out, or were you doing stuff before that?
Well, yeah, so I think the first music that I released was when I was like in middle school. I got Pro Tools and, I don't even remember what microphone I had, but, some condenser mic when I was in like 7th grade or 8th grade, and started kind of learning, how to record and write music pretty early on. I mean, I'd always been writing music, but it was always just like singer-songwriter, like Riley Sbrana. I think I did have an EP that I had put out, I want to say when I was like 19. So it was like a few years before I moved to Colorado, and called Things I Should Have Said in Person. And it was kind of hokey. I mean, I don't know. Very like singer-songwritery, and nothing against, I mean, I love singer-songwriter style music, but I just feel like it, I look back at those songs and I'm like, okay, like the production was really solid. A friend of mine, Jason Moss, from high school, who went on to do some really, I mean, he was always a very talented engineer and producer, was kind of the main one behind that. And I think he did a great job and it sounded great, but like the songs were, I don't know, not something that I was like super proud of in retrospect. And I remember it was like a couple years ago when I worked at the music district and we were doing some workshops around like sync licensing and stuff. And it was during lockdown, so we were on Zoom. And we were talking about, I think maybe I was sharing my screen or something, and I brought up I brought up SoundCloud because we were listening to people's song submissions, and it was logged into my SoundCloud account. And I realized, I'm like, oh, that EP like is on my SoundCloud account, and it was also on other distribution, like it was on Spotify and Apple Music and stuff. But I was like, I don't really identify with this music, and if people were to like have any interest in like searching Riley Sbrana music, like this is what they would find because it's under my name. And so I think like literally during that meeting I googled like how to remove an EP from the internet forever. And I don't know, I mean, again, I don't think it was just one of those things where I'm like, oh, if anybody noticed like, oh yeah, I should add Riley on SoundCloud and see what he has on there, I'm like delete because again, not that, I mean, it's all part of the musician that I am, but I think that it's also, we're in a different time with the way, people access music now. And I think that you do need to be kind of aware of like what is out there representing you. I mean, I remember for the longest time I had a MySpace page that I put out music on, and I forgot the password to that. And it might still, I don't know. Does MySpace still exist? I have no idea.
I think it still exists.
But like, yeah, it was just one of those things where I'm like, well, I guess this is like, I didn't understand the internet at that point. I was like, I'm just putting music on the internet. And then, like down the line, I was like, oh yeah, this is like what people will find if they want to find it. And it was just, you start considering those things. And we were at a weird point as musicians with putting music on the internet, in the early 2000s and not really knowing.
Yeah, there was a lot less. There was a lot less like big picture as far as
totally
the implications of what you put on the internet lasting forever.
Yeah, and also like some of those tweets that I posted, really offensive stuff. I didn't think that would be findable. I mean,
well, it's freedom of speech, brother.
We'll clip to those real quick. Edit here.
Yep, we'll just put them up everywhere.
And we're back.
Yeah, producer's note, Riley is very sorry for the things that he said.
Please do not cancel him.
I don't think that I ever said anything offensive, but you know how like you'll get shown like, old posts occasionally like on social media and it'll pop up, and oh my gosh, man, the things I see, I'm just like, oh, this is
sometimes the
this
cringe
is embarrassing.
level is
I had no
enough.
idea that I would be looking at this as like in my 30s when I was like 17.
Right.
Like it's why
making a post about
we're
hate my
truly the
mom.
first generation that has to deal with that, and like putting out music when you're so young too.
Yeah.
Like any other musician that there's no one was releasing a 7-inch from a 17-year-old.
Yeah.
Well, and there's no one's that really there to tell you like, hey, before you put this out on the internet, you should really make sure that you're like proud of it and that you're gonna like stand by it like 10 years from now. It's kind of how I feel about like the first Blue Taboo record. Is like we put so much time and money into making it, and listening to it now, it's like we should have just waited 2 more years and probably put out something better.
Yeah,
but it's on the internet forever.
And
now,
I think that most people would look at that and say like, no, it's like it's who you were at that time, and you should feel good about like. If you're working hard and putting music out there, that's something you should be proud of. And I'm not in any way saying people should go and like delete their old music, like if they feel like it's not as good as what they're putting out now.
Well, I'm gonna do it though because you said
yeah. I mean, you should, but you should delete all your music.
I think I'm gonna.
Is that an option? No,
I'm gonna sell the drums after this.
But no, I think that it's a personal preference thing. But I do think that my identity as a musician shifted a lot, or at least what I felt like how I wanted to be seen and heard as a musician.
Especially when you're a solo artist too.
Yeah,
when it's music with your name attached to it.
Yeah. So all that is to say, because I think you asked if Nearby Layers was my first project. It was like the first like band that I really put together, because when I came to Colorado in 2015, one of the big draws of like Fort Collins was like, oh, like I feel like I could start a band here. Like, I mean, in Fort Collins, has that vibe. Like, there are a lot of people do it. A lot of people start bands here, and that's cool. Because I mean, when I was living in California in the San Francisco Bay Area, which obviously has a really great music scene, but it's not an accessible music scene, and it's not. I mean, it's a spread. It's a big area. I just didn't feel like it was nearly as accessible for someone who just wanted to like start a band and start playing shows. And I mean, played some shows around the Bay Area, but it was not like, I mean, you come to Fort Collins and it's like, oh, people actually like wanted to hear the music I was making. That was cool, and I do like that, for say what you will about the Fort Collins music scene, and it's, there are flaws as any music scene has, but I do think that it was cool coming here and being like, oh, like people care about what other musicians are doing here, and that was rad. So yeah, I had the idea of Nearby Liars for a long time. So, when you come up with a band name and you're like, one day I'm gonna have a band called that, because Nearby Liars was just an anagram of my name. So I was just like,
oh, that's badass.
do you not know that, Julian?
I think I did know that,
You've
but
been in the band for years. Like
I forgot.
I feel like
I forgot, and it just you just reminded me.
But I just thought that, and as a person who likes like words and wordplay and stuff, I do crossword puzzles because I'm very old. I don't know. I look at words and I like figure out what other words can you spell. What does that say backwards? Which is very much a my dad
fucking nerd.
Yeah, 100%.
It's a great name, Nearby Liars. I always loved that band name, and it's even doper now knowing it's an anagram of Riley Sbrana.
It always reminded me of the band name Local Natives.
Yeah,
I don't know why. They're nothing alike, but there's a similar...
local, nearby.
Local Natives. Yeah,
Nearby
that's
Liars.
kind of
that's all it is.
It's synonymous in a way. Yeah. I
Just
saw
a name
Local Natives live. They were great.
Yeah.
It's a great band.
They're fantastic live.
I haven't heard them in years.
Their last album was kind of mid.
Was it?
Yeah.
I like U2 a little bit more than them.
I think Songs of Innocence was better than anyway. Well, shit. I had a bunch of these things written down as questions, and we kind of just discussed them.
I kind of just rambled.
But no, you're perfect. It's way more.
Well,
it's better this way.
Thank you for
I did
want to
ask
perfection.
what.
I also think you're
you
perfect.
might have already just answered this. Yeah, shut up, please.
I just want Riley to like me, dude.
I'm kidding.
He's not gonna. Okay, so just move past it. What brought you to Fort Collins originally? Was it just the prospect of music, or was there other stuff tied in as well?
Yeah, no, that's it's kind of funny as I think back to like I'm like me now, I would never like just move to a new city. Like, no way, dude. That's crazy.
It's scary.
Don't do that.
Moving across the same city is pretty scary.
Yeah, don't move. Stay where you are. That's my philosophy. But no, I was like 22, 23, I don't know, 2015, I don't know. That would require me to do quick math in my head, which I'm not going to do.
Fuck that.
But no, I was like really in a weird place, like living in California. I had done some community college, but like was still living at home, which, is cool and fine, especially now, like who can afford to not live at home. But I was like also just kind of like ready to like not be living at home. And I was dating this girl that it was just bad. Like it was not a good relationship. And, that's fine. It was probably like, my fault. I'm saying I was like, I have no ill will towards her, and she's obviously going to listen to this because I'm sure she looks at everything that I do online
we
still.
We are quite popular podcast.
Yeah, this is my big break, actually.
We're number one in San Francisco specifically.
But it was like, it was one of those things where I was like, damn, like I really want to do something different, but that's not possible. Like you can't do that. And then I kind of coincidentally met some they were family friends of my parents that like they weren't close. It was like someone they had known a long time ago, and they were out in the Bay Area because they were like looking at some spaces that they were trying to take inspiration from for a place in Fort Collins that they were opening called the Downtown Artery, which we all know and have feelings about one way or the other.
We'll get there.
No, but I met them. We went out to lunch and we're just kind of talking. And I basically ended up sending an email like a few months later and just being like, hey, is this a connection I can use? Like,
Yeah.
is there anything you have for me out there? And I think I did take a weekend trip out to Fort Collins at one point, and I met some of the people who were like, it was like when the Artery was not, I think the upstairs was open, but the downstairs venue, they were building all that. And so I got to like kind of check that out and see Fort Collins. And I remember thinking, do you know what's funny? Is I was wandering around and I went into Tia's, which is the coffee shop that
Shout
is
out.
basically why I know you. I mean, I know you from the Artery, but like it was because I was coming into Tia's getting coffee that I feel like we became buddies. But I remember I went in there just because I was like wandering around Fort Collins by myself and just like, I'm gonna get a coffee here. And I remember thinking like, this would be an awesome place to live. I want to live here. But it was very much just like, yeah, I didn't think it was gonna pan out, but yeah, sure enough, the email was well received, and they said, why don't you come out for 3 months? And it was under the kind of idea of me doing a sort of internship. And it was unpaid, but they were just like letting me stay for free. And, I think it was a good deal, as much as, unpaid internships don't do those.
For audio?
So
Artery?
no, actually it was, I was running a, kind of like a music, what's the term? Like not like a band camp, but like kind of like a band camp, like a rock band camp for kids,
Oh, that's cool.
where we were having so it was called, what was it called, like the music lab or something stupid like that. But yeah, we had a group of kids, like local, like, I think from like 12 to like 16 come in, and we like put them together in a little band, and we did they did some original songs, and then some covers, and ended the week with a show in the Artery. And this was all based off of something that I had done when I was in like 8th grade that had like a really great impact on me, where I had to get together. And I think that they actually ended up with the one I did had enough people that we had like 3 different bands, and you got to pick who you were like. We ended up having like, I think 6 kids, and they were awesome. But yeah, that was like the whole like thing that I was doing, because I was trying to come up with an idea for like, why should I come there? And I remembered I did that, rock band camp thing, and I was like, I'm going to do that. And they were like, we love that idea. And I didn't really know how I was going to do that, but with the resources that we had, the studio, the rehearsal spaces at Cohere, like we had a lot of access to make something like that happen. But the first night that I was in Fort Collins, in 2015, we went over to the Artery like that night, just to like check it out, because I hadn't seen it since the venue had been finished being built. And the guy who was in charge of venue sound at the time, Wes Hogg,
Great name.
and
That's a
great
name.
dude. He's awesome. He happened to walk over, and he was talking to Kent, who was the owner of the whole operation there. And Kent was like, "Oh, hey, like, meet Riley. He's going to be with us for a few months." And he was like, "Oh, hey, nice to meet you." And then he started talking to Kent about, "Man, we really don't have enough sound guys. We need people to like run sound." And I was like, "Oh, that's something I know how to do." And Ken was like, "Great, you're going to do that now." And so it was like not at all my plan, but then I basically ended up within like a month being like one of the only sound guys at the Artery, because Wes was actually focused on the recording studio at the time, and so he was just wanting like someone else to handle that. And then they ended up offering me a full-time spot doing audio for the venue, like, and that was kind of why I ended up staying, because I was only going to be there for a few months. So all that is to say is it kind of just, it was one of those things where like just kind of like there kept being like another opportunity to stay in Fort Collins. And I was like, yeah, I want to stay in Fort Collins. It's cool here. But then, yeah, doing the venue at the Artery, again, like whatever your feelings are about the Artery, I did get to do a lot of really cool stuff there and run sound for a lot of great local bands, and even bands that I was a fan of. Like, this is very cool. And then I think that kind of, because of that, I knew a lot of people in the music scene really quickly. And so, yeah, it made it a really cool place to be. And, just now I've been here for almost 10 years. What is
Yeah,
it like?
you have a house here now.
I do.
You're stuck here.
Yeah, I met my wife
Established.
here. I met my wife in 2016. She wasn't my wife yet when I met her, but
You
she's
guys
usually
didn't
how
now.
get
that
married right
works.
away?
No, she really didn't want to.
Huh,
I
that's weird.
guess you're not supposed to ask about that on first dates, but by like
I
the
will-
second or third date, it was like, all right, fine.
Put a note in my phone.
Wow, so it happened that quickly?
No.
No. Oh, okay.
I couldn't tell if you were being earnest in that question, so I just answered it earnestly. No.
No, I was being earnest.
no,
I've heard
no.
it happen before. Third
Yeah,
date.
no, we were dating for like 2 years and
That's why the
living together
divorce rate
before we.
is 52%.
Well, sometimes it can work.
Anyway,
Oh, we're talking about divorce
well,
now.
so-
See, now it's like one of those podcasts
yeah,
that
we're back on.
I know.
We're back on it.
Dude,
Speaking
guys
of
just get the
divorce,
raw end of
yeah.
the deal in divorces, man. Divorce courts are out to get us. No, that's that. That's the answer to your question, not the divorce thing.
So I guess it's kind of interesting. A few things I didn't really know. I don't think I ever knew how like quickly things happened for you at the Artery and like how in on the ground floor you were there. I knew that like by the time we started playing our first shows there, you were already there.
Yeah, I got to Colorado and it was 1 week after the grand opening of the venue, so I missed that whole like it was what was the band, the like marching band from Denver that I can't think of their name now, but
Oh fuck, I forget what they're called. too.
Itch.io, is that?
Oh, that's like that weird percussion group.
Yeah, they did come back later, but yeah, but it was like I got here 1 week after and was just like literally just running sound like 5 nights a week.
Yeah.
After that, at least.
Well, and when I met you, and when we started like actually talking about shit a bit more, it seemed like you were like very in the scene. Like, yeah, you already knew pretty much every band. You knew like a bunch of individuals. You knew like people running studios. You knew other sound guys. It gave
all
me
lies. I made that all up.
well, it worked.
Yeah,
it
I
gave
padded
me the
my
impression-
resume. I was like, yeah, I know Rick Rubin.
That's
We're
befitting
friends.
of the band name.
Well, and it actually kind of inspired me too at a younger age a little bit. Like, I guess just seeing how in tune with the music scene you were and like how much you cared about like the scene itself kind of made me realize like, oh, I should be tuned into the scene like as a whole, and I should care about the success of the music scene like as a whole rather than only focusing on like my band or like the scene that we're trying to be popular in. Like, I think you kind of showed me that it's important to like maintain relationships with people and also to like pick your battles really well when it comes to like working with people and having people like back to venues, and also just like being respectful of like everyone kind of regardless of if you like exactly what they're doing or not.
And
So-
us growing up here, it's easy to take the scene for granted
Well,
and
and that's
stuff.
kind of what I was gonna say is that like I did find that when I got here, I was very like kind of starry-eyed, excited, like wow, this place is so cool, and it is like, you know, and I think it's very different now. Like even that, like obviously everywhere has gone through a lot of changes, but I do think the music scene was. I mean, like not only were there some venues that are not there anymore. I mean, like Hody's is all like is no
Comedy
more.
Fort.
It's the Comedy Fort, and then obviously the East Coast took over the Artery spot, but like that venue is not the same. Like things have changed, and then like, you know, the New West Fest not happening anymore. I think there are some of these things that I don't know if someone coming to Fort Collins right now would have exactly the same impression that I had at that time, where I mean, literally I was just like, oh, it's like a Thursday and I'm walking around and there's just like live bands playing. Like, who does that? Like,
yeah.
but I also did find like a lot of the people that I connected with and musicians that I was working with and really liked were very disillusioned with the music scene at that point. They were like, dude, Fort Collins, I gotta get out of here, man. And I get that. And it's like, I came from feeling that way in like the San Francisco Bay Area, which again is one of those places where I think a lot of people like want to go. I mean, I wouldn't say people want to go there anymore. But you know, it's like, oh, like there's like cool stuff there. And I'm like, I am sick of this area. Like that's just kind of normal when you grow
Yeah.
up somewhere. But I do feel like I ran into that a lot. And even like early on, like some people that I really friends and collaborators that, have since moved away from Fort Collins because they were just like kind of done with it, which, was a bummer for me coming in and like, being like, cool, like these are my new friends, and then they leave.
They're
but
like,
also
"I'm
I
out."
get it, it's different perspectives, but I do think that, there was something about the music scene in Fort Collins that was very like alluring. And it's funny, like I think the thing I remember specifically that I would say was like the turning point from me just being like one of the guys who just like ran sound occasionally to being like, oh, we should, hit up Riley to do this. And like I had some credibility was New West Fest of 2015. It was, when I'd only been there for a few months. And, they had that venue that was on Linden, the Linden stage. And it was right outside the Artery, but the Artery wasn't doing any music for New West Fest that year. And so it was like, my day off. I was like, cool, I'm going to check out this festival. This is cool. And then there was rain. And so a couple of the bands set to play on the Linden stage got rained out, basically. And it was like, yeah, we're going to have to cancel this set. And someone at the Artery suggested, hey, well, no one's playing our stage today, which was very ambitious of them to just suggest. But yeah, they like called me. And so the bands were, it was In the Whale,
Nice.
and a Legion.
Oh, nice.
So it was like it was two bands that were not only drawing like bigger crowds than that venue had
hold.
or could handle, but also just like louder, bigger music. I mean, Allegiant's setup was massive, and
Those dudes are heavy.
I was the only one who was around. Like the other dudes, like doing sound. I think Josh was also Josh Schoenig, who's also Nearby Liars. He plays bass with us. A nearby liar, if you will. But
And
you
I will.
shouldn't. Okay,
should.
well, I guess you will. But I think he was playing the festival with his band, so he wasn't available. And I think Wes he was somewhere else. But I just specifically remember like someone being like, well, Riley, like you're the only one who knows how to run sound. And I was super stressed about it. And then it went really well. And I just like, I was in the zone, I was like, all right, like I have no choice. And I was just like dripping sweat, running around. I didn't know where everything was at this point in the venue, but somehow we pulled it off. And I mean, I don't think I ever saw the Artery that packed. And I specifically remember like some people being like, oh, wow, I didn't know like you could do that. And I was like, yeah, me neither. But it was one of those things where like, I think after that, it was pretty soon after they were like, they offered me the full-time job and stuff. And it was like, just one of those weird things that happened that was like, I think that was when people like were like, oh, that guy,
he knows his shit.
he knows what he's doing. And did I don't know.
You always,
But it made it
like you did.
seem like that. Exactly. And that's all that I can really hope for. But yeah, no, it was just like funny how, again, all these things that like led to this just all felt very like incidental. Like, oh, well, if that hadn't happened, like, who knows? I might have not stuck around. I'd like to think I would have, but yeah.
Something else would have pulled you back in.
Yeah.
I feel like, well, okay, so we kind of touched on it a little bit, but me and you met each other at Tia's first. Is that how we knew each other, or did we just know of each other and then we met at the Artery
for Blue Taboo?
Okay.
And I had met you because I really liked Jared. Like I don't remember, he did something. Maybe this was before or after, but like I played like a solo set of music and he also played that same gig. And we like I really liked his music. He was a really nice dude. Like I just always liked seeing Jared around. So I think I was like. I was a fan of Blue Taboo early on. And then I think that's how I like when I would go into Tia's, because it was just right across from where I was living at that time. Then I saw you and I was like, oh, dude, I know you. And I was just going in every morning, like at that point, because the place I was living at, my roommates scared me away from using the kitchen very often. So I was just like, I guess I'm going to go get coffee again that I can't afford. Not that it was like, I couldn't afford to be.
Yeah, they weren't paying you.
Anything.
So.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I mean, at that point, they were. I wouldn't say they were paying me that much, but yeah, it was all part of the journey.
So then I guess from us meeting, and I guess you doing
meet
sound for some Blue Taboo shows, which I always remembered those Artery Blue Taboo shows as being our most successful shows. I thought they were like our best ones.
I was under the impression that like, and I'm not saying like, but I saw Blue Taboo as like one of the staple acts in Fort Collins when I started
I
there.
wish.
And then like later on, I do remember there was like maybe one time where like, you know, you guys played a show and like the other band you were playing with, it was like more people for their set. And I was like, I do not understand that. You know, I was like, wait, I thought Blue Taboo was like the band.
No.
And again, that's not me saying like you, like to me, you were.
Oh, thank
But,
you. You might have been I think you were the only one.
No,
we were never
no,
that.
you guys, but
This guy here.
I was gonna say, I always really liked Blue Taboo from the get go, and I think you guys are just so like good and sounded so tight, and like the shows that you played were so fun that I was like, you know, just instantly a fan.
Thank you.
Yeah.
We definitely did our own thing. That's for fucking sure. Not everyone was into it, but those that were into it liked it. So it is cool. And it was fun that, yeah, like of all those shows that we played at the Artery, or all the shows we played in general, like the Artery ones are the ones I like remember the best and have the most fond memories of. And I feel like it's just because it's not to say you ran sound for every single one of our shows, but you definitely ran sound for the vast majority of them. And you always just like helped us out and like did what we wanted, and we always had like stupid like grandiose ideas, and you always like heard us out and like helped us through them. So
Talk to you.
it was
out
always
of
a
them.
super positive
Talk
experience.
you off the ledge. Yeah.
No, I'm
but-
not miking this didgeridoo.
You didn't need to mic half of the things in that room anyway.
Yeah,
It was like,
it's
just
true.
play it.
But I guess from that kind of into Nearby Liars, my brain is a little fuzzy. I don't exactly remember when or why I started playing with Nearby Liars. I remember you
You're like,
had.
why did I say yes to that? Like, what?
I remember you had like songs that you were either about to take to the studio or you were already in the studio with the songs, and your drummer had just moved.
Yeah, I mean, I was playing drums for a while with someone else, or they were playing drums on those songs, and yeah, they moved away. And I also think, I mean, they were super talented, but I also think we were like, I was again like I was kind of starting to think of my music a little bit differently, and you had such a unique style like that, you know, I always really admired, and also were clearly like super talented. And so yeah, I just asked you one day like, hey man, like would you be down, like because you know our drummer is moving on to other things, and yeah, you were. And actually I really specifically remember asking you to be in the band because I was at Tia's and I was ordering coffee, and I was like, yeah, I'm gonna ask Julian if he'd be down to play. I was like talking to you about it, and there was like this group of like CSU students behind me, and like they walked in, and I was like trying to like have a conversation, just like float this idea, and suddenly I'm like, there's like all these people behind me, and I'm holding up the line, and I felt really awkward about it. But I don't know, it's just like a random memory that I'm like, oh yeah, that was a weird moment. But yeah, I feel like it was just kind of one of those things where I probably had like wanted to have you play drums before, but it wasn't like I was gonna like kick anyone out of the band, because again, like it was great, like
Right.
But you know, I just felt like, oh, you know, that's the style that I want, and so yeah, I mean, I have always I think that I haven't worked with any other musician of any like on any instrument that just like knows exactly what my songs need, and I could never explain it to you. I could never be like, here's my idea, and then you put like, no, you're like, oh, here's what this song needs, and I'm like, yeah, I never would have thought of that, and that's perfect. Like I feel like I don't like that is like I feel like we've just always kind of been on the same wavelength with that kind of stuff, and so yeah, I you know, and then with the Young Habitat thing too. I mean, there's not a lot of drums on that, but when we did Foco MX that first time, I was just like, well, I just want to see if Julian would be down to play it, because again, like I'm like, why would I play music with any other drummer if Julian's down to play? Like, there's no reason.
Well, I appreciate that. I think when you approached me about it and asked me if I was interested, I remember my like gut reaction was like, you absolutely need to do this, because I also just had that feeling that like what you were trying to do and like the direction you wanted to go was like something that I also kind of inherently felt like, oh wow, this is like a really cool fresh idea, and I feel like I definitely have something that could work for this. I always feel like it was a very like cohesive kind of thing, and like it always, not to say that I helped really in any way, because at the end of the day I didn't. Like Riley wrote all the songs and brought
I don't think
all the big ideas to the table, but I think
selling yourself short there. Right?
well, arguable. I think the main thing is just the way that we're able to like meet in the middle and find like good common ground and do what's best for the song was always cool. And also, this had to have been like 2016, right? Or
yeah.
some point in 2016, we'll just call it that. So this is definitely the longest I've ever been in any band.
Yeah.
Which is kind of crazy to think about.
I mean, and also to be fair, like, we haven't put anything out since
it
2018.
Still counts, damn it.
But we do have new stuff. I mean, I just on Friday, I was sitting down with John Alonzo, and I can't remember if you know John or not.
I don't think so.
But
you said his first and last name, and I was like, does that mean I should know who this person is? But,
I mean, everybody should know who he is because he's cool.
And again, John Alonzo is a great fucking name.
Yeah,
I
and
could say that all
I've
day.
known him since, since I like 2015 or whenever, he's super nice guy and really talented musician. He played, I think he played bass, maybe guitar, but I think he played bass for Yumi and Apollo.
Okay.
And that was they were before I came out here. I think they had stopped playing, but like super cool band. And I don't think he'd done a whole lot.
Oh fuck, I know John.
You know John?
Was he in Aspen Hourglass? Did he play bass in that?
I don't know. That doesn't sound familiar.
Okay,
but you still might be.
I
right.
think I know John. Yeah.
Yeah, he's one of those guys who is around. But yeah, he's super talented. So anyway, yeah, I was gonna say he sat down and I wanted to have a second guitar in the band. I mean, we've been a trio for most of the Nearby Liars run, but I'm always like the right guitarist would be really great. And
and the shows that Brian
Kelsey,
yeah, Brian was always really, really good, and
oh yeah,
he made the shows like more dynamic.
I mean, he played a few shows before he moved to California, which was a bummer. Like he added a lot, but then ever since then we just never, found a guitar. Like it just, it was also like kind of laziness. I was like, well, then I have to like actually like try to find someone. But anyway, yeah, John and I sat down. Too. Yeah, I know it is, but yeah, I'm really excited because the stuff he was adding to these songs. I mean, again, it was kind of that vibe where it was like I didn't have to tell him really anything, and he was just playing stuff that I'm like, yep, that's it. Literally, like we were jamming on like Mountaintop and like songs that we've been playing for years, and I'm like hearing the song in a new way.
That's fucking awesome.
Which is exciting, because I'm like, oh wow, but also like, damn. Did we record those songs like 5 years too early? No, but so I am excited to bring that component in. We're writing some new tunes, but also like life is
life.
Life is crazy. Josh has a mini Josh now, and and John has 2 kids. So I mean, yeah, it's just like scheduling and getting everyone together is hard. But I am looking forward to kind of revisiting that project,
I'm fucking excited. I think it's going to be really fun, and I think it's nice in a way taking a break, because then people are actually excited when you come back. And I feel like there's some genuine excitement around Nearby Liars.
At least I'm going to be excited.
I'm fucking stoked. And I think another thing I'll add, it's going to sound a little bit self-jerky, but
I feel like that's 90% of what we've been doing for the last like 40 minutes, dude. I'm sorry. Like, Julie and I over here.
He knew the deal. He knew exactly what was going on. The Everything Is Replaced EP has aged like incredibly well. Like I come back to it and I listen to it, not like regularly, but every now and then I'll throw it on and I listen through it and I'm like, wow, this stands up. Like it doesn't sound outdated and it doesn't sound irrelevant. I think, especially considering when it came out and where like the Fort Collins music scene was at when it came out, I think it was pretty ahead of its time. I think it speaks for itself pretty well, and I feel like the like natural cultivation of the fans that was kind of following around when we were playing like a lot of shows, it was like definitely peaking around that time. So I think there's like genuine excitement out there in the universe for us to be back out playing shows again.
Yeah, I mean, I have always, I think I do like occasionally, I'll revisit those songs, and so I feel sometimes a little bit frustrated with myself for not really putting in the legwork to like promote that. I'm not good at that. Like that's just, and I think that's a pretty common refrain with musicians. I think that we find ourselves in that position a lot, where we're like, we write the music and that's fun, and we play the music. I'm not a promo guy. I'm not like, I don't know how to like market myself, and like, you know, some people are really great at it, but like I find that really challenging and hard to really commit to. And yeah, sometimes I feel like, man, I wish more people would like listen to this, because this does hold up. And I mean, yeah, that being said, you know, still play those songs. So it's, you know, when I think from the first Nearby Liars EP to that one, I think there were 2 tracks that we just like re-recorded different versions of and did. So, you know, can always do that.
Yeah.
Just do new versions of everything.
We're about to do that.
Because like,
for
it's
a
not
whole
like I'm going to
album.
write enough songs. I'm a very slow songwriter.
Well, and the other nice thing about that is there's no real rush. Like, I feel like if we were, if
Rush.
the
That's another one of
tables
those
were
bands.
turned formative,
To answer your very first question in the
Nice.
episode, man, Rush.
it's kind of weird. I was almost going to ask about Rush for some reason, but I don't know why. Maybe just because.
So you said the
Steely
word Rush,
Dan?
and I'm
I
like,
don't
yes, the band.
Geddy Lee, my number one influence. Honestly,
That's
probably
funny.
in my top 10.
And it's not Neil Peart. Yeah.
Well, I love Neil Peart, but Geddy Lee,
Oh yeah, no, they're
I want to be like Geddy Lee. I don't want to be like Neil Peart.
What
He
do you
was
mean?
kind of like, well, like
Just like,
Neil Peart's kind of just like grumpy, and he's just like, I'm gonna play the drums, and I'm gonna go home and do my own thing. But Geddy Lee's just always like, I'm gonna do whatever. Like, I'm just gonna fucking let life take me, and I'm gonna fucking send it.
yeah.
And that's
So
I like
I'm
Geddy Lee.
definitely identify with Neil Peart. Is what I'm learning from this. I'm not sending anything.
I'm an Alex Lifeson guy myself, just a weird douchebag.
Just kind of a weird guy.
Yeah, not people are.
Nice. Well, I guess we are nearing the end, but I wanted to do something now that we probably should have done at the beginning. So
Talked
I'm
about
sorry.
you two.
We need to circle
do
back
that?
around to you two. What are your thoughts on the song Elevation? Because it's so simple and yet it's so complex.
Wait, was this actually what
No,
you were
no,
asking?
no.
I-
I'm just really good at pivoting.
no, I think that's a great song.
Great song.
I mean, I think that, okay, wait, was that song is from is that from How to Dismantle?
It's from All That You Can't Leave
It's
Behind.
All That You Can't Leave Behind. Okay.
Which
Yeah.
I think is their worst album.
yeah,
Hot
I'm just
take.
it's one of those
Not
bands where
songs
they
of
have so many
experience.
albums, and I'm kind of like, yeah, I have a hard time placing like what songs are from what albums. But
Mhm.
yeah, no, I
I guess Songs of Experience is probably still their worst album, but
Yeah.
All That You Can't Leave Behind is right behind that.
yeah. No, I mean, it's funny because like I'm struggling to hear Elevations in my head, but I know that I was into that song.
Mo, digging in a
Elevation.
hole.
Yeah. Okay, but you're
Stupid
doing the
fucking
verse,
lyrics.
which is like that's one of those songs where it feels like the chorus like really,
I think that's
I
like
went-
a
I went for the
pre-chorus.
chorus.
Yeah.
but then
Yeah.
like it's got these like kind of I don't know. I wouldn't say they were super memorable because like it's not sticking in my head.
If it hadn't been played on the radio 10 million times, I probably wouldn't have remembered it.
Yeah.
Okay, the real question was, and again, I'm sorry that we didn't do this first. The bands that we're speaking of are Nearby Liars and Young Habitat. So
I guess we didn't really
Nearby
ever say-
Liars is a band that you started. Obviously, we covered that. It was mostly shit that you wrote and kind of brought to the table and other people added to. Not to speak for you, but then I feel like in the Everything Is Replaced era, Colin, not you, don't get a big head. He kind of brought some more like production ideas to the table and
Oh yeah,
kind of
I mean, Colin Ingram, yeah, who worked. I met because he worked at the Artery, but it's funny. We talked about bands that were big influences on where I took my music. Colin is a person who was a very big influence on where I took my music. I feel like how there's just people where like you're like you want to like impress them with like the things like the music that you like. You're like, damn, I want Colin to think that my music
Yeah.
tastes are cool. Or like, I just think he just like was one of those guys that like
it's the same way for
and
me.
he's a great producer, and I feel like and I mean he is still like he still does that full time. But yeah, he also played bass on a lot of those things. I mean, Josh, I feel like Josh maybe laid some, but because we did it at the band cave or at the Artery, and then, damn, I don't even really remember. But
I think
I
that
think
was all
Colin ended
Colin.
up playing, most of the bass and just, really, he was a big influence though on me musically, and at that time too when we were working on those songs, and
Yeah,
but
he
you were
definitely.
saying, sorry, I feel
Well,
like
no, you're all good.
There's an aside there.
No, that was
gush
perfect.
about Colin.
He definitely deserves it. I feel like it was the same thing for me. I always like writing drum parts specifically when I was like freshly 18. I remember just being like, I want Colin to like listen to this drum part and be like, "This is fucking sick." And his reaction was always just kind of like,
But that's just how Colin. He's
But that's
kind of
just how he
aloof,
is.
like
Yeah.
But that's like why he's cool. Like, and,
he's cool. Yeah, he's one of those dudes where it's like, man, this
Yeah.
guy's so fucking cool. I just want to be like him. I want to like have the music taste that he has. I want to.
also, sorry, I just you reminded me because one of the funny things is that when we started playing together, I did not realize how young you were at that time. Like, you're just like someone that I knew like around town, and I don't think I realized because I was probably like 25 or something, and it was like at one of like the house shows that we went to, or maybe it was like one of the venues.
I think it was
And
at Surfside.
Oh, was it Surfside? Yeah, and you had to get like the X on your hand, and I'm like, wait, dude, you're how old are you?
I'm 19, bro.
Okay, all right, so you're of age, but like I just didn't know. I mean, talent speaks for itself, and also you were just like a good dude that I liked. But it was just funny when I was like, I think at one point like
I had a
offered you a
beard,
beer or something, and you were like, I'm 19. I was like, all right,
You're
well then
under
off the
arrest.
record. Yeah, no, that's funny.
Yeah, it was interesting, and also, yeah, like in hindsight, I don't think I realized. I certainly don't think you realize how much joining Nearby Liars at the age of 18 and playing like such high caliber music with such high caliber musicians who hold themselves at such high a standard really like changed the way I thought about shit. And it really was like a formative thing for me where it was like, had I not really joined Nearby Liars and like dropped a lot of my own like preconceived notions about like what good music is and like what good music should be, I'd probably
Which you
still
absolutely have to drop when you listen to Nearby Liars.
Well, I just mean like because I was still super deep in my like the only thing I like is prog phase where like if it's not in multimeter I fucking hate it, and if it's not super fucking experimental I don't like it.
Well, hey, one time we accidentally wrote part of a song that was in 5.
Yeah.
Didn't realize until we were recording it. But
yeah, and then we couldn't count it.
what is
Took us
going on?
all day to figure out what's happening. But yeah, so it definitely just made me shift the way I play and think about music and interacting with other musicians a lot. So I appreciate that.
No, I appreciate it.
But that's Nearby Liars. We kind of are a band on and off. We play shows. We're writing music.
Yes.
Josh Schoenig, big shout out Josh, is the other member of the band.
Mm-hmm. And now John Alonzo.
And then John Alonzo, if we get some
I'm
shows
looking forward
going.
because again, we got some new stuff. So I'm hoping we'll be recording some stuff soon. So
I'm ready.
Josh has got his new studio space. You've got this awesome space. John actually has a home studio.
Oh yeah.
So I mean, we'll make it happen. But
It'll definitely happen. I think, yeah, between the one thing that we didn't really have, or I mean we had like, what was it? The studio at the Artery.
for a brief period.
For a little
that's
bit.
where we did like the first few songs of Everything Is Replaced, and then it shut down.
And then we had
We were like rushing to record those before the studio like sold all of its gear. Like literally,
yeah, I remember
it was like
that.
the last week, and it was like, well, we got to do this now.
And then we recorded a couple tracks at that studio that Colin
Yeah, the band
works at.
cave. Yeah,
But we didn't have too terribly many resources, and now I feel like we've got resources. So
yeah, just not much time. It's a trade. It's a trade-off that you
trade-off.
make as you get older.
Mm-hmm.
But let's talk about Young Habitat for just a sec.
Yeah, sorry. I know. I feel
So-
like we've been
No, you're
We've been
good.
going on, and also
There's
it's
no
basically
real
just been like the
time
me and
constraint.
Julian show. Colin is here, by the way.
No, I talk enough on every other podcast episode.
There's
Everyone's
episodes
sick of
where I mean he has friends on that I've never met, so it's kind of like
Yeah.
the same thing
Yeah.
reversed. But I think I'm kind of just I'm not better at talking than you, but when we know what we're talking about.
This is a common argument you guys have. I'm better at talking. No,
One of
I'm
us,
better
one
at
of
bring it
us
back to
always
U2
knows
at
what's
any
going
point.
on.
Yeah, once we get talking about Bono,
Put me in, coach.
When did the music video for the song "Sweetest Thing" come out? What year? What month?
90? No.
Had to have been after 90.
Yeah. Was it in the 2000s?
no,
Wasn't it like 2001?
Yeah.
that was on the same album that you had like Beautiful Day and
Mm-hmm.
stuff. That was the 90s because I remember I had a third grade teacher who would play that album.
I was going to say 98.
Yeah, I would say, I mean, I would guess maybe even earlier than that, but I mean, it's crazy that I can't just lie. You can just look it up. It was 2000. Oh, well, I guess,
It was
okay.
right in
When
the
I would
middle.
have been in third grade, would have been right around then, I guess, huh? How old is a third grader?
10?
Like
So it was like the late 90s, so she was probably just still listening to it because
Eight.
she loved the album.
8 or 9.
Wow, I would have been sure that
My
was
only
the
gauge
90s.
for this is I moved to Colorado when I was in second grade and I was 7.
Wait, I was 15 in ninth grade. So subtract 6 from that, and you're 9.
Impossible.
You're 9. In third grade, you're 9. Or
8, 9.
8,
Well,
9. 8, 9.
No matter how you look at it, we were enjoying that album before 9/11, which is a very different
They're at
time.
an airport.
Yeah, you couldn't do that a year later. October 2000.
Yeah, right
I'm just
after.
saying.
Okay, so then
Okay,
anyway, Young
I'm just
Habitat.
like avoiding talking about Young Habitat. I'm like, okay, what other tangents can I go on? If I bring up U2, it will stall the conversation.
It's
No,
guaranteed to.
Young Habitat is it's a project, and I wouldn't say it's like necessarily a one-off. There is more Young Habitat music that, like, I mean, it has been actually like recorded and not really like quite finished, but I mean, the whole impetus of that project was that it was started with stuff that I was writing during kind of the height of lockdown pandemic stuff. And I was feeling like pretty musically inspired, but like we couldn't make music with anyone really like easily. And so my buddy Hayden Farr, who I knew from working at the Music District, and he plays in the Burrows and he plays in Trash Cat, and he's an incredibly talented bari sax player. And he plays other things too. He's just incredibly talented, but that's like his main instrument. And he and I had messed around a little bit. Like we would jam occasionally and like mess around with some like funky effects on his saxophone. And like, it was just like one of those things where it was like anytime we got a chance to jam, it was like, oh, this is cool. Like we should do something with this. And then when I started writing these songs and I was thinking, wow, what would be cool on these is some saxophone. That was like something where we both had the means to record ourselves, and then he would send me stuff. Like, I'd send him the tracks and he'd record in his space, and, we were able to do that separately. So the project was kind of like, it was all about making the music more than anything else. We weren't thinking about like playing it live, which was a cool, limitation to remove. It was like, we're not worried about like, are we trying to play shows with this, whatever. Just like really, delve into like the production element of this and like get weird with it. And I mean, not, like adding, different effects that like he, wouldn't normally, playing types of parts that he doesn't necessarily play in his other bands. It was like, we were just kind of experimenting. But also this was like around the time, I guess 2021, I basically wrote almost all of those songs in like a couple months and like recorded them pretty quickly. Right around the time my grandpa died in 2021 of cancer, and we're like a tight family, and I was really close with my grandpa, so I was pretty depressed. Also because like everyone was depressed at that time anyway, and then this happened, and so I don't know. I just kind of holed up, and I wrote music like I had not done in a long time. It was just a creative outlet, and was like, damn, I miss being really depressed because like I'm too happy these days. I don't write enough music. But yeah, so it was like this like kind of experience where like I was like really enjoying the process of making music in a way that I hadn't in a while, especially since like, everything had shut down. And so, yeah. And then inevitably, like, when shows started happening again and stuff, we did end up playing a few shows that were fun. And like, I think that there were ways that we found to like kind of play these songs, but like, I never felt like they really perfectly translated to a live setting because that wasn't how we wrote them. But yeah, we did the EP in first person perspective is what it's called, and I'm really proud of it. I mean, it was very inspired by like Bon Iver, by like early like James Blake. Like James Blake's self-titled album is one of my favorites of all time, and Sufjan, and like, you know, that kind of like, you know, folksy, but then also gets into the experimental like synthy stuff and vocal manipulation and all that. And I was having a lot of fun with that, those kind of ideas, but then also directly inspired from the Bon Iver song "Washed" from their self-titled album. The name Young Habitat, which, you know, as I thought it would be a cool idea to just like take a Bon Iver lyric and turn it into a band name. Like, I thought that for a long time because, like, you know, Justin Vernon's lyrics are so like unique and kind of cryptic, and like it's like, you know, so I had like a whole list of like, you know, what would be cool band names that you could rip from a Bon Iver song. But again, like that project was kind of self-contained. I was just like, we were just having fun making music, had no expectations for it, and, you know, still don't really, which is why it's kind of fun. It's like, you know, I feel like I can channel certain ideas, like what I'm feeling like writing. Does this feel like maybe the Nearby Liars treatment would be better for it, or the Young Habitat treatment? And that's why I think what you said earlier about like, there are some things that I think, there are some songs I had that I'm like, this could kind of go either way, but then they're going to end up feeling very different depending on which project I start thinking about it in. But yeah, like, so like right now I'm very much more like thinking in a Nearby Liars mindset in the songs I'm writing. But, you know, Young Habitat was a great kind of outlet to have at that time, and I'm hoping that we'll do more music with that. But I do think that EP turned out really well. I think it was really cool,
That
and we
EP
did
is super
play.
dope.
I
I was
appreciate
a big
it.
fan
Yeah,
of it.
I love that.
We played
EP.
Foco MX right before, or right after. It was right after Wax Romantics, which was fun. I mean, that was a cool that whole night. Like, there were some cool bands playing, and that was fun to be able to do. But really, like, I think we played like maybe 3 or 4 shows, and really, I think only like 2 of them Hayden was there because he plays in other bands and he's super busy. So
I think I was only there for 2 of them also.
yeah, the one we did, the Greeley
Mm-hmm.
gig where I had to lug all my heavy gear so far.
Yeah, blocks. I
Um,
was going to say miles. Might as well for the
It made-
podcast.
you
It was
felt like it.
miles.
it was
Uphill
both
both
ways.
ways. Yeah.
Exactly. Yes, we're both lame. We get all of our jokes from popsicle sticks. That's my personality. But yeah, no, it was fun. But it was like one of those things where, yeah, I do think to this day, like, the value for me in that project was the process of making music, and I never really loved playing it live quite as much, which is fine. I think that that's totally okay.
Yeah.
But you know, we'll see what happens with that. Like I said, right now I'm very much in a Nearby Liars mindset, and I want to play loud. I want to yell. I don't want to have to sing pretty.
Let's do it. Okay, so I guess when it comes to like future goals, I guess you kind of touched on it a little bit, but in the future we can expect new Nearby Liars, hopefully this year, maybe next year. We'll see how it goes.
Yeah.
And then the Young Habitat is kind of just going to be a project that self-satisfies whenever it's relevant for
I
you.
like that. Yeah. I like
Cool.
the way you put that.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
I think that's how it should be. And I think when it comes to, like, again, local shit that, and not to just put it in the box if it's only impressive because it's local, but especially because it comes from Fort Collins, like, I attach like some extra pride to it, you know? Like, that Young Habitat EP sticks out as being like one of the best, if not like the best thing, in my opinion, to like come out of Fort Collins in the last several years. So
Wow.
I think you should be super fucking proud of it. I think
That's so mean to say about Fort Collins, man.
no, they deserve it.
I'm
There's
kidding.
like
No, I really
not that
appreciate
much
that.
happening, and what is happening is kind of all self-derivative in that cycle of being designed to impress others. But I feel like the Young Habitat was really just a thing that you did for yourself and helped you through a time in your life. And the like just like the genuine emotion on that record sticks through in ways that like a lot of other records that I've listened to lately just don't. So I think you should be super fucking proud of
It
it.
means a lot, man. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, dude. You're great. I think the takeaway from this at the end is Riley's fucking great.
Good thing I have a beard, or you'd see I'm blushing.
The Nearby Liars shit is all incredible. The Young Habitat stuff is amazing as well, and the not necessarily not that it's like consistent projects, but the releases that the projects do have and the consistency that we've been able to maintain throughout the years, I think is something to be proud of. And I'm happy to be a part of the group. I think Josh, if he were here, would say the same thing. So
I hope so.
Hell yeah.
hell yeah.
Well, everyone check out Nearby Liars. Check out Young Habitat. Look out for the new shit. Riley, thanks so much for coming on, dude.
Yeah, thank you guys.
Love to have you on for future sods.
Yeah, no, this was fun. I enjoyed it. I've had to pee the whole time, but other than that,
we could have stopped.
It's been great. No, we don't stop while the magic's
Yeah,
happening.
we'll never
True.
get this feeling
No,
back.
exactly.
Yeah, does interrupt the flow. Flow.
Try not to say words that.
This
Yeah, just
episode
kind of like a
will.
stream of
This will stream.
consciousness.
This episode will
These
stream.
ideas are just kind of trickling in one by one, and I think we needed to. Yeah, no, I do really have to pee though. So
All right.
right on.
Hell
Thanks,
yeah.
Riley.
Yeah, thank you for being
thank
here.
you.
Yeah. Goodbye.
Bye.